Hello everyone, my name is Matthew Allen and welcome back to What a Book. Today we start our journey into Percy Jackson and the Olympians, Book 3, The Titan's Curse. Chapter 1. My rescue operation goes very wrong. The Friday before winter break, my mom packed me an overnight bag and a few deadly weapons and took me to a new boarding school. We picked up my friends Annabeth and Thalia on the way. It was an 8-hour drive from New York to Bar Harbor, Maine. Sleet and snow pounded the highway. Annabeth, Thalia, and I hadn't seen each other in months, but between the blizzard and the thought of what we were about to do, we were too nervous to talk much. Except for my mom. She talks more when she's nervous. By the time we finally got to Westover Hall, it was getting dark, and she told Annabeth and Thalia every embarrassing baby story there was to tell about me. Thalia wiped the fog off the car window and peered outside. Oh, yeah. This'll be fun. Westover Hall looked like an evil knight's castle. It was all black stone with towers and slit windows and a big set of wooden double doors. It stood on a snowy cliff overlooking this big frosty forest on one side and the gray churning ocean on the other. Are you sure you don't want me to wait? My mother asked. No thanks, Mom, I said. I don't know how long it will take. We'll be okay. But how will you get back? I'm worried, Percy. I hoped I wasn't blushing. It was bad enough I had to depend on my mom to drive me to my battles. It's okay, Miss Jackson, Annabeth smiled reassuringly. Her blonde hair was tucked into a ski cap and her gray eyes were the same color as the ocean. We'll keep him out of trouble. My mom seemed to relax a little. She thinks Annabeth is the most level-headed demigod ever to hit 8th grade. She's sure Annabeth often keeps me from getting killed. She's right, but that doesn't mean I have to like it. All right, dears, my mom said. Do you have everything you need? Yes, Miss Jackson, Thalia said. Thanks for the ride. Extra sweaters? You have my cell phone number. Mom. Your ambrosia and nectar, Percy? And a golden drachma in case you need to contact camp? Mom, seriously. We'll be fine. Come on, guys. She looked a little hurt, and I was sorry about that, but I was ready to be out of that car. If my mom told one more story about how cute I looked in the bathtub when I was 3 years old, I was going to burrow into the snow and freeze myself to death. Annabeth and Thalia followed me outside. The wind blew straight through my coat like ice daggers. Once my mother's car was out of sight, Thalia said, Your mom is so cool, Percy. She's pretty okay, I admitted. What about you? You ever get in touch with your mom? As soon as I said it, I wished I hadn't. Thalia was great at giving evil looks, what with the punk clothes she always wears, the ripped-up army jacket, black leather pants and chain jewelry, the black eyeliner, and those intense blue eyes. But the look she gave me now was a perfect evil 10. If that was any of your business, Percy. We'd better get inside, Annabeth interrupted. Grover will be waiting. Thalia looked at the castle and shivered. You're right. I wonder what he found here that made him send the distress call. I stared up at the dark towers of Westover Hall. Nothing good, I guessed. The oak doors groaned open, and the three of us stepped into the entry hall in a swirl of snow. All I could say was, whoa. The place was huge. The walls were lined with battle flags and weapon displays, antique rifles, battle axes, and a bunch of other stuff. I mean, I know Westover was a military school and all, but the decorations seemed like overkill. Literally. My hand went to my pocket where I kept my lethal ballpoint pen riptide. I could already sense something wrong in this place. Something dangerous. Thalia was rubbing her silver bracelet, her favorite magic item. I knew we were thinking the same thing. A fight was coming. Annabeth started to say, I wonder where... The door slammed shut behind us. Okay, I mumbled. Guess we'll stay a while. I could hear music echoing from the other end of the hall. It sounded like dance music. We stashed our overnight bags behind a pillar and started down the hall. We hadn't gone very far when I heard footsteps on the stone floor, and a man and woman marched out of the shadows to intercept us. They both had short gray hair and black military-style uniforms with red trim. The woman had a wispy mustache, and the guy was clean-shaven, which seemed kind of backward to me. They both walked stiffly, like they had broomsticks taped to their spines. Well, the woman demanded, what are you doing here? I realized I hadn't planned for this. I'd been so focused on getting to Grover and finding out what was wrong, I hadn't considered that someone might question 3 kids sneaking into the school at night. We hadn't talked at all in the car about how we would get inside. I said, Ma'am, we're just... Ha! The man snapped, which made me jump. Visitors are not allowed at the dance. You shall be ejected. He had an accent. French, maybe? He pronounced his J like Jacques. He was tall, with a hawkish face. His nostrils flared when he spoke, which made it really hard not to stare up his nose, and his eyes were 2 different colors, one brown, one blue, like an alley cat's. I figured he was about to toss us into the snow, but then Thalia stepped forward and did something very weird. She snapped her fingers. The sound was sharp and loud. Maybe it was just my imagination, but I felt a gust of wind trickle out from her hand, across the room. It washed over all of us, making the banners rustle on the walls. "Oh, but we're not visitors, sir," Thalia said. "We go to school here. You remember, I'm Thalia, and this is Annabeth and Percy. We're in the 8th grade. The male teacher narrowed his two-colored eyes. I didn't know what Thalia was thinking. Now we'd probably get punished for lying and thrown into the snow. But the man seemed to be hesitating. He looked at his colleague. "Miss Gottschalk, do you know these students?" Despite the danger we were in, I had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing. A teacher named Gottschalk? He had to be kidding. The woman blinked, like someone had just woken her from a trance. Yes, I believe I do, sir." She frowned at us. "Annabeth, Thalia, Percy. What are you doing away from the gymnasium?" Before we could answer, I heard more footsteps and Grover ran up, breathless. "Oh, you made it. He stopped short when he saw the teachers. "Oh, Mrs. Gottschalk, Dr. Thorne, "What is it, Mr. Underwood?" said the man. His tone made it clear that he detested Grover. "What do you mean they made it? These students live here." Grover swallowed. "Oh, yes, sir, of course, Dr. Thorne. I just meant I'm so glad they made the punch for the dance. The punch is great, and they made it." Dr. Thorne glared at us. I decided one of his eyes had to be fake. The brown one? The blue one? He looked like he wanted to pitch us off the castle's highest tower, but then Mrs. Gottschalk said dreamily, "Yes, the punch is excellent. Now run along, all of you. You are not to leave the gymnasium again." We didn't wait to be told twice. We left with a lot of yes ma'ams and yes sirs and a couple of salutes, just because it seemed like the thing to do. Grover hustled us down the hall in the direction of the music. I could feel the teacher's eyes on my back, but I walked closely to Thalia and asked in a low voice, "How'd you do that finger snap thing?" "You mean the mist? Hasn't Chiron shown you how to do that yet?" An uncomfortable lump formed in my throat. Chiron was our head trainer at camp, but he'd never shown me anything like that. Why had he shown Thalia and not me? Grover hurried us to a door that had Jim written on the glass. Even with the dyslexia, I could read that much. "That was close," Grover said. "Thank the gods you got here." Annabeth and Thalia both hugged Grover. I gave him a big high five. It was good to see him after so many months. He'd gotten a little taller and had sprouted a few more whiskers, but otherwise he looked like he always did when he passed for human. A red cap on his curly brown hair to hide his goat horns, baggy jeans and sneakers with fake feet to hide his furry legs and hooves. He was wearing a black t-shirt that took me a few seconds to read. It said, "Westover Hall, Grunt." I wasn't sure whether that was like Grover's rank or maybe just the school motto. "So, what's the emergency?" I asked. Grover took a deep breath. "I found 2. 2 half-bloods?" Thalia asked, amazed. "Here?" Grover nodded. Finding 1 half-blood was rare enough. This year, Chiron had put the satyrs on emergency overtime and sent them all over the country, scouring schools from 4th grade through high school for possible recruits. These were desperate times. We were losing campers. We needed all the new fighters we could find. The problem was, there just weren't that many demigods out there. "A brother and a sister," he said. "They're 10 and 12. I don't know their parentage, but they're strong. We're running out of time, though. I need help." "Monsters?" "1. Grover looked nervous. "He suspects. I don't think he's positive yet, but this is the last day of term. I'm sure he won't let them leave campus without finding out. It may be our last chance. Every time I try to get close to them, he's always there blocking me. I don't know what to do." Grover looked at Thalia desperately. I tried not to feel upset by that. Used to be, Grover looked at me for answers, but Thalia had seniority. Not just because her dad was Zeus. Thalia had more experience than any of us with fending off monsters in the real world. "Right," she said. "These half-bloods are at the dance?" Grover nodded. "Then let's dance," Thalia said. "Who's the monster?" "Oh," Grover said, and looked around nervously. "You just met him. The vice principal, Dr. Thorne." Weird thing about military schools. The kids go absolutely nuts when there's a special event, and they get to be out of uniform. I guess it's because everything's so strict the rest of the time they feel like they've got to overcompensate or something. There were black and red balloons all over the gym floor, and guys were kicking them in each other's faces, or trying to strangle each other with the crepe paper streamers taped to the walls. Girls moved around in football huddles the way they always do, wearing lots of makeup and spaghetti-strap tops and brightly colored pants and shoes that looked like torture devices. Every once in a while, they'd surround some poor guy like a pack of piranhas, shrieking and giggling, and when they finally moved on, the guy would have ribbons in his hair and a bunch of lipstick graffiti all over his face. Some of the older guys looked more like me, uncomfortable, hanging out at the edges of the gym and trying to hide, like any minute they might have to fight for their lives. Of course, in my case, it was true. There they are. Grover nodded toward a couple of younger kids arguing in the bleachers. Bianca and Nico D'Angelo. The girl wore a floppy green cap, like she was trying to hide her face. The boy was obviously her little brother. They both had dark, silky hair and olive skin, and they used their hands a lot as they talked. The boy was shuffling some kind of trading cards. His sister seemed to be scolding him about something. She kept looking around like she sensed something was wrong. Annabeth said, "Do they? Have you told them?" Grover shook his head. "You know how it is. That could put them in more danger. Once they realize who they are, their scent becomes stronger." He looked at me, and I nodded. I'd never really understood what half-bloods smell like to monsters and satyrs, but I knew that your scent could get you killed. And the more powerful a demigod you became, the more you smelled like a monster's lunch. "So let's grab them and get out of here," I said. I started forward, but Thalia put her hand on my shoulder. The vice principal, Dr. Thorne, had slipped out of a doorway near the bleachers and was standing near the D'Angelo siblings. He nodded coldly in our direction. His blue eyes seemed to glow. Judging from his expression, I guess Thorne hadn't been fooled by Thalia's trick with the mist after all. He suspected who we were. He was just waiting to see why we were here. "Don't look at the kids," Thalia ordered. "We have to wait for a chance to get them. We need to pretend we're not interested in them. Throw them off the scent." "How?" "We're 3 powerful half-bloods. Our presence should confuse him. Mingle. Act natural. Do some dancing. But keep an eye on those kids." "Dancing?" Annabeth asked. Thalia nodded. She cocked her ear to the music and made a face. "Ugh, who chose the Jesse McCartney?" Grover looked hurt. "I did." "Oh my gods, Grover, that is so lame. Can't you play, like, Green Day or something?" "Green who?" "Never mind. Let's dance." "But I can't dance." "You can if I'm leading," Thalia said. "Come on, goat boy." Grover yelped as Thalia grabbed his hand and led him onto the dance floor. Annabeth smiled. "What?" I asked. "Nothing. It's just cool to have Thalia back." Annabeth had grown taller than me since last summer, which I found kind of disturbing. She used to wear no jewelry except for her Camp Half-Blood bead necklace, but now she wore little silver earrings shaped like owls, the symbol of her mother, Athena. She pulled off her ski cap, and her long blonde hair tumbled down her shoulders. It made her look older, for some reason. So, I tried to think of something to say. "Act natural," Thalia had told us. "When you're a half-blood on a dangerous mission, what the heck is natural?" Designed any good buildings lately?" Annabeth's eyes lit up, the way they always did when she talked about architecture. "Oh my god, Percy. At my new school, I get to take 3D design as an elective, and there's this cool computer program." She went on to explain how she designed this huge monument that she wanted to build at Ground Zero in Manhattan. She talked about structural supports and facades and stuff, and I tried to listen. I knew she wanted to be a super architect when she grew up. She loves math and historical buildings and all that, but I hardly understood a word she was saying. The truth was, I was kind of disappointed to hear that she liked her new school so much. It was the first time she'd gone to school in New York. I'd been hoping to see her more often. It was a boarding school in Brooklyn, and she and Thalia were both attending, close enough to Camp Half-Blood that Chiron could help if they got in any trouble. Because it was an all-girls school, and I was going to MS-54 in Manhattan, I hardly ever saw them. "Yeah, cool," I said. "So you're staying there the rest of the year, huh?" Her face got dark. "Well, maybe, if I don't..." "Hey," Thalia called to us. She was slow dancing with Grover, who was tripping all over himself, kicking Thalia in the shins, and looking like he wanted to die. At least his feet were fake. Unlike me, he had an excuse for being clumsy. "Dance, you guys," Thalia ordered. "You look stupid just standing there." I looked nervously at Annabeth, then at the groups of girls who were roaming the gym. "Well," Annabeth said. Who should I ask?" She punched me in the gut. "Me, seaweed brain." Oh, right." So we went onto the dance floor, and I looked over to see how Thalia and Grover were doing things. I put one hand on Annabeth's hip, and she clasped my other hand like she was about to judo throw me. "I'm not going to bite," she told me. "Honestly, Percy, don't you guys have dances at your school?" I didn't answer. The truth was we did, but I'd never, actually danced at one. I was usually one of the guys playing basketball in the corner. We shuffled around for a few minutes. I tried to concentrate on little things, like the crepe paper streamers in the punch bowl, anything but the fact that Annabeth was taller than me, my hands were sweaty and probably gross, and I kept stepping on her toes. "What were you saying earlier?" I asked. "Are you having trouble at school or something?" She pursed her lips. "It's not that. It's my dad." Uh-oh. I knew Annabeth had a rocky relationship with her father. "I thought it was getting better with you two. Is it your stepmom again?" Annabeth sighed. "He decided to move. Just when I was getting settled in New York, he took this stupid new job researching for a World War I book in San Francisco." She said this the same way she might say Fields of Punishment or Hades' gym shorts. "So he wants you to move out there with him?" I asked. "To the other side of the country," she said miserably. "And half-bloods can't live in San Francisco. He should know that." "What? Why not?" Annabeth rolled her eyes. Maybe she thought I was kidding. "You know, it's right there." "Oh," I said. I had no idea what she was talking about, but I didn't want to sound stupid. "So, you'll go back to living at camp, or what?" It's more serious than that, Percy. I probably should tell you something." Suddenly, she froze. "They're gone." "What?" I followed her gaze. The bleachers, the two half-blood kids, Bianca and Nico, were no longer there. The door next to the bleachers was wide open. Dr. Thorne was nowhere in sight. "We have to get Thalia and Grover." Annabeth looked around frantically. "Where'd they dance off to? Come on." She ran through the crowd. I was about to follow when a mob of girls got in my way. I maneuvered around them to avoid getting the ribbon and lipstick treatment, and by the time I was free, Annabeth had disappeared. I turned a full circle, looking for her, or Thalia and Grover. Instead, I saw something that chilled my blood. About 50 feet away, lying on the gym floor, was a flappy green cap just like the one Bianca D'Angelo had been wearing. Near it were a few scattered trading cards. Then I caught a glimpse of Dr. Thorne. He was hurrying out a door at the opposite end of the gym, steering the D'Angelo kids by the scruffs of their necks like kittens. I still couldn't see Annabeth, but I knew she'd be heading the other way, looking for Thalia and Grover. I almost ran after her, and then I thought, wait. I remembered what Thalia had said to me in the entry hall, looking at me all puzzled when I asked about the finger snap trick. Hasn't Chiron shown you how to do that yet? I thought about the way Grover had turned to her, expecting her to save the day. Not that I resented Thalia. She was cool. It wasn't her fault her dad was Zeus and she got all the attention. Still, I didn't need to run after her to solve every problem. Besides, there wasn't time. The D'Angelos were in danger. They might be long gone by the time I found my friends. I knew monsters. I could handle this myself. I took Riptide out of my pocket and ran after Dr. Thorne. The door led into a dark hallway. I heard sounds of scuffling up ahead, then a painful grunt. I uncapped Riptide. The pen grew in my hands until I held a bronze Greek sword about 3 feet long with a leather-bound grip. The blade glowed faintly, casting a golden light on the rows of lockers. I jogged down the corridor, but when I got to the other end, no one was there. I opened a door and found myself back in the main entry hall. I was completely turned around. I didn't see Dr. Thorne anywhere, but there on the opposite side of the room were the D'Angelo kids. They stood frozen in horror, staring right at me. I advanced slowly, lowering the tip of my sword. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." They didn't answer. Their eyes were full of fear. What was wrong with them? Or was Dr. Thorne? Maybe he'd sensed the presence of Riptide and retreated. Monsters hated celestial bronze weapons. "My name's Percy," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "I'm going to take you out of here, get you somewhere safe." Bianca's eyes widened, her fists clenched. Only too late did I realize what her look meant. She wasn't afraid of me. She was trying to warn me. I whirled around and something went whoosh. Pain exploded in my shoulder. A force like a huge hand yanked me backwards and slammed me into the wall. I slashed with my sword, but there was nothing to hit. A cold laugh echoed through the hall. Yes, Perseus Jackson," Dr. Thorne said. His accent mangled the J in my last name. "I know who you are." I tried to free my shoulder. My coat and shirt were pinned to the wall by some kind of spike, a black dagger-like projectile about a foot long. It had grazed the skin of my shoulder as it passed through my clothes, and the cut burned. I'd felt something like this before. Poison. I forced myself to concentrate. I would not pass out. A dark silhouette now moved toward us. Dr. Thorne stepped into the dim light. He still looked human, but his face was ghoulish. He had perfect white teeth, and his brown-blue eyes reflected the light of my sword. "Thank you for coming out of the gym," he said. "I hate middle school dances." I tried to swing my sword again, but he was just out of reach. Whoosh! A second projectile shot from somewhere behind Dr. Thorne. He didn't appear to move. It was as if someone invisible were standing behind him, throwing knives. Next to me, Bianca yelped. The second thorn impaled itself in the stone wall, half an inch from her face. "All three of you will come with me," Dr. Thorne said, quietly, obediently. "If you make a single noise, if you call out for help or try to fight, I will show you just how accurately I can throw." Chapter 2. The Vice Principal Gets a Missile Launcher. I didn't know what kind of monster Dr. Thorne was, but he was fast. Maybe I could defend myself if I could get my shield activated. All that it would take was a touch of my wristwatch, but defending the D'Angelo kids was another matter. I needed help, and there was only one way I could think to get it. I closed my eyes. "What are you doing, Jackson?" hissed Dr. Thorne. "Keep moving." I opened my eyes and kept shuffling forward. "It's my shoulder," I lied, trying to sound miserable, which wasn't hard. "It burns." "Bah! My poison causes pain. It will not kill you. Walk." Thorne herded us outside, and I tried to concentrate. I pictured Grover's face. I focused on my feelings of fear and danger. Last summer, Grover had created an empathy link between us. He'd sent me visions in my dreams to let me know where he was in trouble. As far as I knew, we were still linked, but I'd never tried to contact Grover before. I didn't even know if it would work while Grover was awake. "Hey, Grover," I thought. "Thorne's kidnapping us. He's a poisonous, spike-throwing maniac. Help." Thorne marched us into the woods. We took a snowy path dimly lit by old-fashioned lamplights. My shoulder ached. The wind blowing through my ripped clothes was so cold that I felt like a Percy sickle. "There is a clearing ahead," Thorne said. "We will summon your ride." "What ride?" Bianca demanded. "Where are you taking us?" "Oh, silence, you insufferable girl." "Hey, don't talk to my sister that way," Nico said. His voice quivered, but I was impressed that he had the guts to say anything at all. Dr. Thorne made a growling sound that definitely wasn't human. It made the hair stand up on the back of my neck, but I forced myself to keep walking and pretend I was being a good little captive. Meanwhile, I projected my thoughts like crazy, anything to get Grover's attention. "Grover, apples, tin cans, get your furry goat behind out here and bring some heavily armed friends." "Halt," Thorne said. The woods had opened up. We'd reached a cliff overlooking the sea. At least I sensed the sea was down there, hundreds of feet below. I could hear the waves churning, and I could smell the coldy, salty froth, but all I could see was mist and darkness. Dr. Thorne pushed us toward the edge. I stumbled, and Bianca caught me. "Thanks," I murmured. "What is he?" she whispered. "How do we fight him?" I'm working on it." "I'm scared," Nico mumbled. He was fiddling with something, a little metal toy soldier of some kind. "Stop talking," Dr. Thorne said. "Face me." We turned. Thorne's two-tone eyes glittered hungrily. He pulled something from under his coat. At first I thought it was a switchblade, but it was only a phone. He pressed the side button and said, "The package. It is ready to deliver." There was a garbled reply, and I realized Thorne was in walkie-talkie mode. This seemed way too modern and creepy, a monster using a mobile phone. I glanced behind me, wondering how far the drop was. Dr. Thorne laughed. "By all means, son of Poseidon. Jump. There is the sea. Save yourself." "What did he call you?" Bianca muttered. "I'll explain later," I said. "You do have a plan, right?" "Grover," I thought desperately, "come to me." Maybe I could get both the D'Angelos to jump with me into the ocean. If we survived the fall, I could use the water to protect us. I'd done things like that before. If my dad was in a good mood and listening, he might help. Maybe. "I would kill you before you ever reached the water," Dr. Thorne said, as if reading my thoughts. "You do not realize who I am, do you?" A flicker of movement behind him, and another missile whistled so close to me that it nicked my ear. Something had sprung up behind Dr. Thorne, like a catapult, but more flexible, almost like a tail. "Unfortunately," Thorne said, "you are wanted alive, if possible. Otherwise, you would already be dead." "Who wants us?" Bianca demanded. "Because if you think you'll get a ransom, you're wrong. We don't have any family. Nico and I—" Her voice broke a little. "We've got no one but each other." "Oh," Dr. Thorne said. "Do not worry, little brats. You will be meeting my employer soon enough. Then you will have a brand new family." "Luke," I said. "You work for Luke." Dr. Thorne's mouth twisted with distaste when I said the name of my old enemy, a former friend who tried to kill me several times. "You have no idea what is happening, Percy Jackson. I will let the General enlighten you. You are going to do him a great service tonight. He is looking forward to meeting you." "The General?" I asked. Then I realized I'd said it with a French accent. "I mean, Who's the general? Thorn looked toward the horizon. Ah, here we are. Your transportation. I turned and saw a light in the distance, a searchlight over the sea. Then I heard the chopping of helicopter blades getting louder and closer. Where are you taking us? Nico said. Oh, you should be honored, my boy. You will have the opportunity to join a great army, just like that silly game you play with cards and dolls. They're not dolls, they're figurines, and you can take your great army and... Now, Dr. Thorne warned. You will change your mind about joining us, my boy. And if you do not, well, there are other uses for half-bloods. We have many monster mouths to feed. The great stirring is underway. The great what? I asked. Anything to keep him talking while I tried to figure out a plan. The stirring of monsters, Dr. Thorne smiled evilly. The worst of them, the most powerful, are now waking. Monsters that have not been seen in thousands of years. They will cause death and destruction, the likes of which mortals will have never known. And soon we shall have the most important monster of all, the one that shall bring about the downfall of Olympus. Okay, Bianca whispered to me. He's completely nuts. We have to jump off the cliff, I told her quietly, into the sea. Oh, super idea. You're completely nuts too. I never got the chance to argue with her because just then an invisible force slammed into me. Looking back on it, Annabeth Smooth was brilliant. Wearing her cap of invisibility, she plowed into the D'Angelos and me, knocking us to the ground. For a split second, Dr. Thorne was taken by surprise, so his first volley of missiles zipped harmlessly over our heads. This gave Thalia and Grover a chance to advance from behind, Thalia wielding her magic shield, Aegis. If you've never seen Thalia run into battle, you have never been truly frightened. She uses a huge spear that expands from this collapsible mace canister she carries in her pocket, but that's not the scary part. Her shield is modeled after one her dad Zeus uses, also called Aegis, a gift from Athena. The shield has the head of the Gorgon Medusa molded into the bronze, and even though it won't turn you to stone, it's so horrible, most people will panic and run at the sight of it. Even Dr. Thorne winced and growled when he saw it. Thalia moved in with her spear. For Zeus! I thought Dr. Thorne was a goner. Thalia jabbed at his head, but he snarled and swatted the spear aside. His hand changed into an orange paw with enormous claws that sparked against Thalia's shield as he slashed. If it hadn't been for Aegis, Thalia would have been sliced like a loaf of bread. As it was, she managed to roll backward and land on her feet. The sound of the helicopter was getting louder behind me, but I didn't dare look. Dr. Thorne launched another volley of missiles at Thalia, and this time I could see how he did it. He had a tail, a leathery, scorpion-like tail that bristled with spikes at the tip. The missiles deflected off Aegis, but the force of their impact knocked Thalia down. Grover sprang forward. He put his pipe reed to his lips and began to play, a frantic jig that sounded like something pirates would dance to. Grass broke through the snow. Within seconds, rope-thick weeds were wrapping around Dr. Thorne's legs, entangling him. Dr. Thorne roared and began to change. He grew larger until he was in his true form. His face still human, but his body that of a huge lion. His leathery, spiky tail whipped deadly thorns in all directions. A manticore, Annabeth said, now visible. Her magical New York Yankees cap had come off when she'd plowed into us. Who are you people? Bianca D'Angelo demanded. And what is that? A manticore? Nico gasped. He's got 3,000 attack power and +5 to saving throws. I didn't know what he was talking about, but I didn't have time to worry about it. The manticore clawed Grover's magic weeds to shreds, then turned towards us with a snarl. Get down! Annabeth pushed the D'Angelos flat into the snow. At the last second, I remembered my own shield. I hit my wristwatch and metal plating spiraled out into a thick bronze shield. Not a moment too soon, the thorns impacted against it with such force they dented the metal. The beautiful shield, a gift from my brother, was badly damaged. I wasn't sure it would even stop a second volley. I heard a thwack and a yelp, and Grover landed next to me with a thud. Yield, the monster roared. Never, Thalia yelled from across the field. She charged the monster, and for a second I thought she would run through. But then there was a thunderous noise and a blaze of light from behind us. The helicopter appeared out of the mist, hovering just beyond the cliffs. It was a sleek black military-style gunship with attachments on the side that looked like laser-guided rockets. The helicopter had to be manned by mortals, but what was it doing here? How could mortals be working with a monster? The searchlights blinded Thalia, and the manticore swatted her away with its tail. Her shield flew off into the snow. Her spear flew in the other direction. No! I ran out to help her. I parried away a spike just before it would have hit her chest. I raised my shield over us, but I knew it wouldn't be enough. Dr. Thorne laughed. Now do you see how hopeless it is? Yield, little heroes. We were trapped between a monster and a fully armed helicopter. We had no chance. Then I heard a clear, piercing sound, the call of a hunting horn blowing in the woods. The manticore froze. For a moment, no one moved. There was only the swirl of snow and wind and the chopping of the helicopter blades. No, Dr. Thorne said. It cannot be. His sentence was cut short when something shot past me like a streak of moonlight. A glowing silver arrow sprouted from Dr. Thorne's shoulder. He staggered backward, wailing in agony. Curse you! Thorne cried. He unleashed his spikes, dozens of them at once, into the woods where the arrow had come from, but just as fast, silvery arrows shot back in reply. It almost looked like the arrows had intercepted the thorns in midair and sliced them in two, but my eyes must have been playing tricks on me. No one, not even Apollo's kids at camp, could shoot with that much accuracy. The manticore pulled the arrow out of his shoulder with a howl of pain. His breathing was heavy. I tried to swipe at him with my sword, but he wasn't as injured as he looked. He dodged my attack and slammed his tail into my shield, knocking me aside. Then the archers came from the woods. They were girls, about a dozen of them. The youngest was maybe 10, the oldest about 14, like me. They wore silvery ski parkers and jeans, and they were all armed with bows. They advanced on the manticore with determined expressions. The hunters, Annabeth cried. Next to me, Thalia muttered, Oh, wonderful. I didn't have a chance to ask what that meant. One of the older archers stepped forward with her bow drawn. She was tall and graceful with coppery-colored skin. Unlike the other girls, she had a silver circlet braided into the top of her long dark hair, so she looked like some kind of Persian princess. Permission to kill, my lady. I couldn't tell who she was talking to because she kept her eyes on the manticore. The monster wailed. This is not fair. Direct interference. It is against ancient laws. Not so, another girl said. This one was a little younger than me, maybe 12 or 13. She had auburn hair gathered back in a ponytail and strange eyes, silvery yellow like the moon. Her face was so beautiful it made me catch my breath, but her expression was stern and dangerous. The hunting of all wild beasts is within my sphere, and you, foul creature, are a wild beast. She looked at the older girl with the circlet. Zoe, permission granted. The manticore growled. If I cannot have these alive, I shall have them dead. He lunged at Thalia and me, knowing we were weak and dazed. No! Annabeth yelled, and she charged at the monster. Get back, half-blood, the girl with the circlet said. Get out of the line of fire. But Annabeth leaped into the monster's back and drove her knife into his mane. The manticore howled, turning in circles with his tail flailing as Annabeth hung on for dear life. Fire! Zoe ordered. No! I screamed. But the hunters let their arrows fly. The first caught the manticore in the neck. Another hit his chest. The manticore staggered backward, wailing. This is not the end, huntress. You shall pay. And before anyone could react, the monster, with Annabeth still on his back, leaped over the cliff and tumbled into the darkness. Annabeth! I yelled. I started to run after her, but our enemies weren't done with us. There was a snap, snap, snap from the helicopter, the sound of gunfire. Most of the hunters scattered as tiny holes appeared in the snow at their feet, but the girl with auburn hair just looked up calmly at the helicopter. Mortals, she announced, are not allowed to witness my hunt. She thrust out her hand and the helicopter exploded into dust. No, not dust. The black metal dissolved into a flock of birds, ravens which scattered into the night. The hunters advanced on us. The one called Zoe stopped short when she saw Thalia. You, she said with distaste. Zoe Nightshade. Thalia's voice trembled with anger. Perfect timing, as usual. Zoe scanned the rest of us. 4 half-bloods and a satyr, my lady. Yes, the younger girl said. Some of Chiron's campers, I see. Annabeth, I yelled. You have to let us save her. The auburn-haired girl turned toward me. I'm sorry, Percy Jackson, but your friend is beyond help. I tried to struggle to my feet, but a couple of the girls held me down. You are in no condition to be hurling yourself off cliffs, the auburn-haired girl said. Let me go, I demanded. Who do you think you are? Zoe stepped forward as if to smack me. No, the other girls ordered. I sense no disrespect, Zoe. He is simply distraught. He does not understand. The young girl looked at me, her eyes colder and brighter than the winter moon. I am Artemis, she said, goddess of the hunt. Chapter 3. Bianca D'Angelo makes a choice. After seeing Dr. Thorne turn into a monster and plummet off the edge of a cliff with Annabeth, you'd think nothing else could shock me. But when this 12-year-old girl told me she was the goddess Artemis, I'd said something real intelligent like, okay. That was nothing compared to Grover. He gasped, then knelt hastily in the snow and started yammering. Thank you, Lady Artemis. You're so... wow. Oh, get up, goat boy, Thalia snapped. We have other things to worry about. Annabeth is gone. Whoa, Bianca D'Angelo said. Hold up. Time out. Everybody looked at her. She pointed her finger at all of us in turn like she was trying to connect the dots. Who are you people? Artemis's expression softened. It might be a better question, my dear girl, to ask who are you? Who are your parents? Bianca glanced nervously at her brother, who was still staring in awe at Artemis. Our parents are dead, Bianca said. We're orphans. There's a bank trust that pays for our school, but... She faltered. I guess she could tell from our faces that we didn't believe her. What? She demanded. I'm telling the truth. You are a half-blood, Zoe Nightshade said. Her accent was hard to place. It sounded old-fashioned, like she was reading from a really old book. One of thy parents was mortal. The other was an Olympian. An Olympian athlete? No, Zoe said. One of the gods. Cool, said Nico. No, Bianca's voice quavered. This is not cool. Nico danced around like he needed to use the restroom. Does Zeus really have lightning bolts that do 600 damage? Does he get extra movement points for it? Nico, shut up. Bianca put her hands to her face. This is not your stupid mytho-magic game, okay? There are no gods. As anxious as I felt about Annabeth, all I wanted to do was search for her. I couldn't help feeling sorry for the D'Angelos. I remembered what it was like for me when I first learned I was a demigod. Thalia must have been feeling something similar because the anger in her eyes subsided a little bit. Bianca, I know it's hard to believe, but the gods are still around. Trust me, they're immortal. And whenever they have kids with regular humans, kids like us, well, our lives are dangerous. Dangerous, Bianca said, like the girl who fell. Thalia turned away. Even Artemis looked pained. Do not despair for Annabeth, the goddess said. She was a brave maiden. If she can be found, I shall find her. Then why won't you let us go look for her? I asked. She is gone. Can't you sense it, son of Poseidon? Some magic is at work. I do not know exactly how or why, but your friend has vanished. I still wanted to jump off the cliff and search for her, but I had a feeling that Artemis was right. Annabeth was gone. If she'd been down there in the sea, I thought I'd be able to feel her presence. Ooh, Nico raised his hand. What about Dr. Thorne? That was awesome how you shot him with arrows. Is he dead? He was a manticore, Artemis said. Hopefully he is destroyed for now, but monsters never truly die. They reform over and over again, and they must be hunted whenever they appear. Or they'll hunt us, Thalia said. Bianca D'Angelo shivered. That explains. Nico, you remember last summer, those guys who tried to attack us in the alley in D.C.? And that bus driver, Nico said, the one with the ram's horns. I told you that was real. That's why Grover's been watching you, I said, to keep you safe if you turn out to be half-bloods. Grover? Bianca stared at him. You're a demigod? Well, a satyr, actually. He kicked off his shoes and displayed his goat hooves. I thought Bianca was going to faint right there. Grover, put your shoes back on, Thalia said. You're freaking her out. Hey, my hooves are clean. Bianca, I said, we came here to help you. You and Nico need training to survive. Dr. Thorne won't be the last monster you meet. You need to come to camp. Camp? She asked. Camp Half-Blood, I said. It's where half-bloods learn to survive and stuff. You can join us, stay there year-round if you like. Sweet, let's go, said Nico. Wait, Bianca shook her head. I don't... There is another option, Zoe said. No, there isn't, Thalia said. Thalia and Zoe glared at each other. I didn't know what they were talking about, but I could tell there was bad history between them. For some reason, they seriously hated each other. We've burdened these children enough, Artemis announced. Zoe, we will rest here for a few hours. Raise the tents, treat the wounded, retrieve our guests' belongings from the school. Yes, my lady. And Bianca, come with me. I would like to speak with you. What about me? Nico asked. Artemis considered the boy. Perhaps you can show Grover how to play that card game you enjoy. I'm sure Grover would be happy to entertain you for a while, as a favor to me. Grover just about tripped over himself getting up. You bet. Come on, Nico. Nico and Grover walked off toward the woods, talking about hit points and armor ratings and a bunch of other geeky stuff. Artemis led a confused-looking Bianca along the cliff. The hunters began unpacking their knapsacks and making camp. Zoe gave Thalia one more evil look, then left to oversee things. As soon as she was gone, Thalia stamped her foot in frustration. The nerve of those hunters! They think they're so... Urgh. I'm with you, I said. I don't trust... Oh, you're with me? Thalia turned on me furiously. What were you thinking back there in the gym, Percy? You'd take on Dr. Thorne all by yourself? You knew he was a monster. If we'd stuck together, we could have taken him without the hunters getting involved. Annabeth might still be here. Did you think of that? My jaw clenched. I thought of some harsh things to say, and I might have said them too. But then I looked down and saw something navy blue lying in the snow at my feet. Annabeth's New York Yankees baseball cap. Thalia didn't say another word. She wiped a tear from her cheek, turned, and marched off, leaving me alone with the trampled cap in the snow. The hunters set up their camping site in a matter of minutes. 7 large tents, all of silver silk, curved in a crescent around one side of a bonfire. One of the girls blew a silver dog whistle, and a dozen white wolves appeared out of the woods. They began circling the camp like guard dogs. The hunters walked among them and fed them treats, completely unafraid, but I decided I would stick close to the tents. Falcons watched us from the trees, their eyes flashing in the firelight, and I got the feeling they were on guard duty too. Even the weather seemed to bend to the goddess's will. The air was still cold, but the wind died down and the snow stopped falling, so it was almost pleasant sitting by the fire. Almost. Except for the pain in my shoulder and the guilt weighing me down. I couldn't believe Annabeth was gone, and as angry as I was at Thalia, I had a sinking feeling that she was right. It was my fault. What had Annabeth wanted to tell me in the gym? Something serious, she said. Now I might never find out. I thought about how we danced together for half a song, and my heart felt even heavier. I watched Thalia pacing in the snow at the edge of camp, walking among the wolves without fear. She stopped and looked back at Westover Hall, which was now completely dark, looming on the hillside beyond the woods. I wondered what she was thinking. 7 years ago, Thalia had been turned into a pine tree by her father to prevent her from dying. She'd stood her ground against an army of monsters on top of Half-Blood Hill in order to give her friends Luke and Annabeth time to escape. She'd only been back as a human for a few months now, and once in a while she would stand so motionless you'd think she was still a tree. Finally, one of the hunters brought me my backpack. Grover and Nico came back from their walk, and Grover helped me fix up my wounded arm. It's green, Nico said with delight. Hold still, Grover told me. Here, eat some ambrosia while I clean that out. I winced as he dressed the wound, but the ambrosia square helped. It tasted like homemade brownie, dissolving in my mouth and sending a warm feeling through my whole body. Between that and the magic salve Grover used, my shoulder felt better within a couple of minutes. Nico rummaged through his own bag, which the hunters had apparently packed for him, though how they'd snuck into Westover Hall unseen, I didn't know. Nico laid out a bunch of figurines in the snow, little battle replicas of Greek gods and heroes. I recognized Zeus with a lightning bolt, Ares with a spear, Apollo with his sun chariot. Big collection, I said. Nico grinned. I've got almost all of them, plus they're holographic cards. Well, except for a few really rare ones. You've been playing this game a long time? Just this year. Before that, he knit his eyebrows. What? I said. I forgot. That's weird. He looked unsettled, but it didn't last long. Hey, can I see that sword you were using? I showed him Riptide and explained how it turned from a pen into a sword just by uncapping it. Cool. Does it ever run out of ink? Well, I don't actually write with it. Are you really the son of Poseidon? Well, yeah. Can you surf really well, then? I looked at Grover, who was trying hard not to laugh. Geez, Nico, I said. I've never really tried. He went on asking questions. Did I fight a lot with Thalia since she was the daughter of Zeus? I didn't answer that one. If Annabeth's mother was Athena, the goddess of wisdom, then why didn't Annabeth know better than to fall off a cliff? I tried not to strangle Nico for asking that one. Was Annabeth my girlfriend? At this point, I was ready to stick the kid in a meat-flavored sack and throw him to the wolves. I figured any second he was going to ask me how many hit points I had, and I'd lose my cool completely, but then Zoe Nightshade came up to us. Percy Jackson. She had dark brown eyes and a slight upturned nose. With her silver circlet and her proud expression, she looked so much like royalty that I had to resist the urge to sit up straight and say, Yes, ma'am. She studied me distastefully, like it was a bag of dirty laundry she'd been sent to fetch. Come with me, she said. Lady Artemis wishes to speak with thee. Zoe led me to the last tent, which looked no different from the others, and waved me inside. Bianca D'Angelo was seated next to the auburn-haired girl, who I still had trouble thinking of as Artemis. The inside of the tent was warm and comfortable. Silk rugs and pillows covered the floor. In the center, a golden brazier of fire seemed to burn without fuel or smoke. Behind the goddess, on a polished oak display stand, was her huge silver bow, carved to resemble gazelle horns. The walls were hung with animal pelts, black bear, tiger, and several others I didn't recognize. I figured an animal rights activist would have had a heart attack looking at all those rare skins, but maybe since Artemis was the goddess of the hunt, she could replenish whatever she shot? I thought she had another animal pelt lying next to her, and then I realized it was a live animal, a deer with glittering fur and silver horns, its head resting contently in Artemis's lap. Join us, Percy Jackson, the goddess said. I sat across from her on the tent floor. The goddess studied me, which made me uncomfortable. She had such old eyes for a young girl. Are you surprised by my age? She asked. Um, a little. I could appear as a grown woman, or a blazing fire, or anything else I want, but this is what I prefer. This is the average age of my hunters, and all young maidens for whom I am patron before they go astray. Go astray? I asked. Grow up. Become smitten with boys, become silly, preoccupied, insecure, forget themselves. Oh. Zoe sat down at Artemis's right. She glared at me as if all the stuff Artemis had just said was my fault, like I'd invented the idea of being a guy. You must forgive my hunters if they do not welcome you, Artemis said. It is very rare that we would have boys in this camp. Boys are usually forbidden to have any contact with the hunters. The last one to see this camp. She looked at Zoe. Which one was that? That boy in Colorado, Zoe said. You turned him into a jackalope. Ah, yes. Artemis nodded, satisfied. I enjoy making jackalopes. At any rate, Percy, I have asked you here so that you might tell me more of the manticore. Bianca has reported some of the disturbing things the monster said, but she may not have understood them. I'd like to hear them from you. And so I told her. When I was done, Artemis put her hand thoughtfully on her silver bow. I feared this was the answer. Zoe sat forward. The scent, my lady? Yes. One scent, I asked. Things are stirring that I have not hunted in millennia, Artemis murmured. Prey so old I have nearly forgotten. She stared at me intently. We came here tonight sensing the manticore, but he was not the one I seek. Tell me again exactly what Dr. Thorne said. I hate middle school dances. No, after that. He said somebody called the General was going to explain things to me. Zoe's face paled. She turned to Artemis and started to say something, but Artemis raised her hand. Go on, Percy, the goddess said. Well, then Thorne was talking about the great stirpot. Stirring, Bianca corrected. Yeah, and he said, soon we shall have the most important monster of all, the one that shall bring about the downfall of Olympus. The goddess was so still she could have been a statue. Maybe he was lying? I said. Artemis shook her head. No, he was not. I've been too slow to see the signs. I must hunt this monster. Zoe looked like she was trying very hard not to be afraid, but she nodded. We will leave right away, my lady. No, Zoe. I must do this alone. But Artemis, this task is too dangerous even for the hunters. You know where I must start my search. You cannot go there with me. As you wish, my lady. I will find this creature, Artemis vowed, and I shall bring it back to Olympus by winter solstice. It will be all the proof I need to convince the council of the gods of how much danger we are in. You know what the monster is? I asked. Artemis gripped her bow. Let us pray I am wrong. Can goddess pray? I asked, because I'd never really thought about that. A flicker of a smile played across Artemis's lips. Before I go, Percy Jackson, I have a small task for you. Does it involve getting turned into a jackalope? Sadly, no. I want you to escort the hunters back to Camp Half-Blood. They can stay there in safety until I return. What? Zoe blurted out. But Artemis, we hate that place. The last time we stayed there... Yes, I know, Artemis said. But I'm sure Dionysus will not hold a grudge just because of a little, misunderstanding. It's your right to use Cabin 8 whenever you are in need. Besides, I hear they rebuilt the cabins you burned down. Zoe muttered something about foolish campers. And now, there is one last decision to make. Artemis turned to Bianca. Have you made up your mind, my girl? Bianca hesitated. I'm still thinking about it. Wait, I said. Thinking about what? They've invited me to join the hunt. What? But you can't. You have to come to Camp Half-Blood so Chiron can train you. It's the only way you can learn to survive. It is not the only way for a girl, Zoe said. I couldn't believe I was hearing this. Bianca, camp is cool. It's got a Pegasus stable and a sword-fighting arena and... I mean, what do you get by joining the hunters? To begin with, Zoe said, immortality. I stared at her, then at Artemis. She's kidding, right? Zoe rarely kids about anything, Artemis said. My hunters follow me on my adventures. They are my maidservants, my companions, my sisters in arms. Once they swear loyalty to me, they are indeed immortal, unless they fall in battle, which is unlikely, or break their oath. What oath? I said. To forswear romantic love forever, Artemis said. To never grow up, never get married, to be a maiden eternally. Like you. The goddess nodded. I tried to imagine what she was saying. Being immortal, hanging out with only middle school girls forever, I couldn't get my mind around it. So, you just go around the country recruiting half-bloods? Not just half-bloods, Zoe interrupted. Lady Artemis does not discriminate by birth. All who honor the goddess may join. Half-bloods, nymphs, mortals. Which are you, then? Anger flashed in Zoe's eyes. That is not thy concern, boy. The point is, Bianca may join if she wishes. It is her choice. Bianca, this is crazy, I said. What about your brother? Nico can't be a hunter. Certainly not, Artemis agreed. He will go to camp. Unfortunately, that's the best boys can do. Hey, I protested. You can see him from time to time, Artemis assured Bianca, but you will be free of responsibility. You will have the camp counselors to take care of him, and you will have a new family. Us. A new family, Bianca repeated dreamily. Free of responsibility. Bianca, you can't do this, I said. It's nuts. She looked at Zoe. Is it worth it? Zoe nodded. It is. What do I have to do? Say this, Zoe told her. I pledge myself to the goddess Artemis. I pledge myself to the goddess Artemis. I turn my back on the company of men, accept eternal maidenhood, and join the hunt. Bianca repeated the lines. That's it? Zoe nodded. If Lady Artemis accepts thy pledge, then it is binding. I accept it, Artemis said. The flames in the brazier brightened, casting a silver glow over the room. Bianca looked no different, but she took a deep breath and opened her eyes wide. I feel stronger. Welcome, sister, Zoe said. Remember your pledge, Artemis said. It is now your life. I couldn't speak. I felt like a trespasser, and a complete failure. I couldn't believe I had come all this way and suffered so much only to lose Bianca to some eternal girls' club. Do not despair, Percy Jackson, Artemis said. You will still get to show the D'Angelos your camp, and if Nico so chooses, he can stay there. Great, I said, trying not to sound surly. How are we supposed to get there? Artemis closed her eyes. Dawn is approaching. Zoe, break camp. You must get to Long Island quickly and safely. I shall summon a ride from my brother. Zoe didn't look real happy about this idea, but she nodded and told Bianca to follow her. As she was leaving, Bianca paused in front of me. I'm sorry, Percy, but I want this. I really, really do. Then she was gone, and I was left alone with the 12-year-old goddess. So, I said glumly, we're going to get a ride from your brother, huh? Artemis's silver eyes gleamed. Yes, boy. You see, Bianca D'Angelo is not the only one with an annoying brother. It's time for you to meet my irresponsible twin, Apollo. And that's where we will leave it off for today. Thank you guys so much for joining me as we venture into Percy Jackson and the Olympians, the Titan's Curse. If you liked it, make sure to reach out to me on social media and let me know. As this is March Safe for Kids, you cannot leave comments. So the only way to reach me is using the Linktree link, where you can then find me on Instagram and Twitter. Also in that link, you will find the YouTube channel where I post a video game every single day, as well as the Twitch where I like to stream games. Thank you guys so much for listening. I've been Matthew Allen. This has been What a Book, The Titan's Curse. And I will see all of you when I see ya.